Hey guys, and welcome to Comics in the Captain's Quarters. So, I'm going to showcase this comic from February 1988. It's Star Trek The Next Generation, and it's issue 1 of 6. It's a 6-issue miniseries based on the hot new TV show. Of course, the show hadn't even really come out yet. I'll talk about that as we take a look at this book. But basically, my intention with this is just to share some of my comics. In addition to Federation Figure Fridays. So occasionally we'll take a look at a comic book together. And here is the dealio. There are some YouTube channels where when they show a comic, they just basically, flip through it and show you how many pages, and that's about it. It's not very satisfying, especially when there's no sound, there's no dialogue, there's no telling of the story, there's nothing. You're just basically running through the book and seeing every single page, It's basically a page count. But there are other videos where they really showcase the comic. I mean, they take images of each panel in the comic, and sometimes they kind of animate it, they add sound effects, they have voice actors, they read it to you. Actually, in fact, they're actually performing it for you. And you can find really elaborate comic performances, basically, on YouTube with sound effects and everything. It's really amazing. So I'm not that tech savvy, as much of a Star Trek fan as I am. But I'm also not just going to sit here with the camera and thumb through the pages for you, because you want more than that. So what I intend to do, I'm not going to read it to you. I was thinking of doing that, but I'll show each page, and if you want to read it, you can always pause the video and actually read it panel for panel if you want, with this method. But otherwise, I'll just talk about whatever comes to mind as we look at the book together. So that's basically what we're going to do. And as Glinda said in The Wizard of Oz, it's always best to start at the beginning. So we're starting with issue 1 of 6, the very first Star Trek The Next Generation comic appearance, like I said, February 88. Look at that artwork on the cover. The Enterprise D, looking quite spectacular. They always say you can't judge a book by its cover, but comic covers sell the book. So that's a really good cover. Anyway, here's your first page. If you want to read it, you can pause and zoom in, and there it is. But like I said, we'll just talk about it as we go along. This particular first issue is, I think, a pretty good story. It's got a twist at the end, which I found amusing. It's not based on an actual episode. And I should point that out actually right now, because as you can see, I think you can see, where is it? Right there, 1987, although it came out in February 88, Encounter at Farpoint, the first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, wasn't even out yet. In fact, even when the second issue came on, it hadn't aired on television yet, because the editor of this magazine, in the second comic, in the letters section, says that Encounter at Farpoint hasn't even premiered yet, so no one's seen it. So all of this was written before Star Trek The Next Generation even hit the air. But they had access to sets and, costumes, so they can get their art right. But if you do read this comic, you'll see that some of the sets are not exactly accurate, and certainly some of the characterizations, of the personalities of the characters are not quite right, because they haven't really been established yet. People act out of character, So anyway, there's this big, beautiful splash page. Again, super looking shot of the Enterprise D flying through space. was respect artists. They had to, somebody drew this, and inked it. A lot of work, really. I think people don't realize just how much work goes into producing a comic. And on a deadline, generating these things month after month after month. Tough job, but somebody's got to do it. Okay, now look at this bridge. Check that out. Look at that. It's fantastic. You've got the tactical arch. You've got ops and con. The view screen. It looks great. See, DC really did well. I think it looks fantastic. You notice the uniforms and Deanna's hairstyle are all as they appeared in that first season. But it looks good. Now, I don't know if it's comic liberty or whether they did it for dramatic visual purposes or not. But check out how jacked everybody is. I mean, look at that. Look how buff everybody is, really. I remember I think it was in Nemesis that Picard was talking about he's got to visit the gym because they're all going to appear naked for Deanna's wedding. But anyway, they've all got bodies of superheroes. Maybe that's just a sign of the time. But anyway, we will continue. And again, like I said, if you read this, you will find that some of the characterization is out of line. Worf's not as assertive, shall we say, as he really is. And Picard says bull a lot, which is kind of out of character. I know Picard, in the first season, Picard wasn't exactly the friendliest of captains, But everyone eventually grew into their character. And you'll notice, too, as we go through these comics, that they eventually evolve as well. And because the series hadn't come out yet, the stories focus on things that weren't really, focused on in the actual show. Like the fact that families were on board. Family was a big deal in this particular comic book. Look at that action shot. Check that out. That's a cool shot. But here they do talk about families to some extent. And in a bit, you're going to see these two characters that were created for this comic. They never actually appeared on the show. Thankfully. You'll see why in a second. The Bickleys, I think they're called, or the Bickerleys or something. Properly named, because they're always fighting. So you'll see them in a second. And speaking of superheroes, you'll see what they look like. There they are. There they are. Boy, they really got the bridge right. At least in that first season. That looks really good. Marina Sirtis as Troi. And here they come, these two, I think the Bickleys? I don't know what their names are, but it's a married couple, and they, as you can see, they're dressed like superheroes. These are characters that did not appear in the show, but they fight all the time, basically. It's supposed to be like comic relief in this story, but it's cringeworthy. Oh, here. Yeah, the Bickleys. The Bickleys are at it again, I see. Yep. Luckily, over this, this 6-episode arc, the Bickleys quietly start to disappear, and then they're not seen or heard of again for obvious reasons, actually. Now there's Wesley. I mean, look at that. Look at Picard. Picard was in shape. Patrick Stewart, I guess the best shape he was in First Contact. But he was a thin guy. He wasn't super built like they have him appear here, towering over Wesley. Gates McFadden is Dr. Crusher. And these are, of course, the first season uniforms that were kind of spandex and 1 or 2 sizes too short for each of the actors. Because Roddenberry said that in the 24th century there wouldn't be any wrinkles in clothing. But it was a bad idea for the cast because first of all, it wasn't comfortable to wear. Actually, it affected some of their backs. I don't know if it was Patrick Stewart or I don't know, Frakes maybe, but somebody actually had back problems because the uniform was so tight, it was compressing their spine, basically. Transporter effect. Also, I mean, if you watch any behind the scenes, if you know any of the behind the scenes information about the show, they talked about it being kind of unhygienic, shall we say, that everyone's body odor wasn't very pleasant in those outfits. So something had to be done about it. So in season 3 through 7, they changed the outfit to a 2-piece, at least for the men, just for a little more comfort. And they subtly changed the design as well. They gave them a mandarin collar, so it didn't look as much as if they were wearing pajamas, Looked a bit more uniform-like. But of course here, this is season 1. They're wearing their space pajamas. And it's interesting to see how the characters evolve over time, both here in the comic and in the TV show. It takes some time for everyone to find their footing, and for the actors to settle into the characters. That's a pretty intimidating vehicle on this planet. Huge. When you see the vehicle compared to the size of these two. Frakes is Riker. Again, Marina Sirtis. They changed her hairstyle. I never really did like that, but that's how she appeared in season 1. Still being attacked. And if I remember right, they're not sure why. But of course, the twist is coming, so spoiler alert, guys. If you want to read this comic, you better mute the video now because the big spoiler's coming. Now, there's another video on YouTube where somebody saw this picture and said, I don't remember He-Man being in in any episode of Star Trek, but of course, this was never an episode of Star Trek. This is just written for the comics. Data showing off his strength there. Although, if I remember this comic right, this would have made an interesting episode, I thought, because of the twist, which is coming. I really do appreciate their artwork. You know? And it must be hard to draw so that you can recognize the characters. You know, you want the actor's likeness as best as you can. And here I am saying the likeness is pretty good, and yet they're all jacked right up. Totally beefed up. Spending lots of time in the gym or the holodeck working out. See, they're being attacked, not sure why. And of course, it turns out that the adults on this planet who are attacking our cast are actually children, and that the young people of the planet here are the real leaders. It's as if they age backwards or something, so it's kind of an interesting twist. So there you have it. Now, next month, look at this, Captain's Yule Log next month. It's kind of like a Christmas episode, which is weird if you consider that they're celebrating Christmas in the 24th century. That is a weird episode. We're going to talk about that next, obviously. But there was never really a Christmas episode of Star Trek on TV. However, the next issue is the Christmas sort of issue. There's a sneak peek of the cover next month. You can see that. But anyway, we will talk about that when we get there. So there you have it. Episode 1, Star Trek, The Next Generation. Comics in the Captain's Quarters. And this is the way I will do it with each issue. Just kind of show you each issue. Try and show you the pages clearly. So like I said, if you want to read it, you can just pause it and enjoy the book for what it is. So there you have it, guys. Thanks for watching. And stay tuned for more Comics in the Captain's Quarters.